Okay, here in example 2, I've given you a function and then asked you to find the results for 4 different inequalities. And so let's take a look here at letter A. I'm going to go ahead and start off by finding what I call the critical numbers or critical points by setting the function equal to 0 and solving. And so this is going to give me x is equal to -3 and x is equal to +2. And so when I draw my number line, I'm going to put -3 and +2. Now, I'm ready to start testing intervals. Notice that this first parentheses is squared, so it is always going to be positive. The second one is cubed, and so it could sometimes be negative. And so here I go, I'm ready to plug in some numbers. Here on the first interval, I could plug in, let's say, -4. If I plug it into the first parentheses, it doesn't matter, it's always positive. And then -4 minus 2 is negative, and when I cube a negative, it stays negative. And so this is going to be a negative section. From -3 to +2, we could try 0. If I plug into the first parentheses, it's going to be positive because of the square, and 0 minus 2 is -2, cubed stays negative, and so this is also going to be a negative section. From 2 to infinity, we just need to try any number bigger than 2, so I'll just choose the next integer over, which would be +3, and then that's going to give me a positive in the first parentheses and a positive in the second parentheses, since 3 minus 2 cubed is going to be +1, and so that's going to be a positive section. Okay, I'm now ready to answer my 4 questions. In letter A, I'm looking for where does f of x greater than 0? So that is just the positive sections, and that's it. Nothing other than the positive sections. And so the only positive section is going to be here from 2 to infinity. Now I'm not going to include 2 because 2 was one of my zeros, and so this answer for letter A is just going to be not including 2 until infinity. Now for letter B, we want f of x strictly less than 0, so that would just be the negative sections, not including the zeros, and so that means we're going to have the first negative section from -infinity to -3, and the second negative section from -3 to +2, not including any of the zeros. Okay, in letters C and D, this is where it gets a little bit more complicated. We, in letter C, not only want the positive sections, but we also want any zeros to be included. And so my answer is going to look somewhat similar to letter A, but it's going to include 2 additional points. It's going to include this -3 because that's a 0, and it's going to include that 2 along with this positive section here. Okay, so I want to erase that, what I just did, because I don't want to have to redraw my sign chart, but hopefully you can see what our answer is going to be. So I'm going to erase what I just did and then write the answer from it. So I'm going to have the set of just the number -3, and in addition to that, I'm going to have the interval which begins with including 2 and going to positive infinity. And again, I've got to have this set of -3 here because I'm including the zeros. This says to include all of the numbers that make f of x either equal to 0 or greater than 0. And so that's why I have this set of -3, because that was one of my zeros. Now for letter D, this one is a little more straightforward, I think. And so for D, I'm going to be including my zeros, and I am going to be including my negative sections, and so that's going to be here, and it's going to be here. And so if you look, where we started shading on our number line was at -infinity, and we did not stop or have any gaps until we got to 2, and we went ahead and included 2 as one of our answers. So there it is. If you have any questions on that, or I didn't explain it quite thoroughly enough, please feel free to reach out, but hopefully that's making a little bit of sense. Now letter B is going to go by much faster, because when we find the critical numbers, we find something very interesting. When I set x squared plus 4 equal to 0, that's going to be x squared is equal to negative 4. And so x is equal to positive or negative 2i, and that's imaginary, so I can't put anything on my number line. And then 2x squared plus 3 equals 0 is going to give me 2x squared is equal to negative 3, so x squared equals to negative 3 halves, and so x, again, is going to be something imaginary. And so there are no critical values to put on my number line, and so the only thing I can do is just choose any number, and so I'm just going to choose 0, and whatever I plug in, that's going to be true for all values of x. Okay, and so for a, f of x positive, well, let's see here. If I plug in 0, I'm going to get positive, and so therefore the entire number line is going to be positive. There are no zeros and there are no negatives. And so for letter A, f of x is greater than 0 all the time, from negative infinity to positive infinity. Letter B, when is f of x negative? Never. So I'm going to put a symbol that represents the empty set, which is just a 0 with a slash through it, to represent that this function is never less than 0. For letter C, where is f of x either positive or 0? Well, it's positive all the time, so this is going to be negative infinity to infinity. And then letter D, where is this function negative or 0? Well, it's never negative, and it's never 0, so therefore D is also going to be the empty set.